So welcome to the Wise Crowds design call. What we're going to try and do together, gents, this is a unique event with men only, so it's kind of guys time, right? Let's bro down together.
Do we want to
fellas.
Record or not?
yeah, we should probably turn it off. That way we can wrestle at some point. So what we're going to try and do is field a help request from one of us or two, and come up with a string of structures that person can apply to their real life situation. Let me get to the right place. There we go. The first thing I want to do is invite everybody to do some form of self-assessment about where you are at individually on your Liberating Structures learning journey. So if you are brand new to Liberating Structures, you can't name any of them off the top of your head. That would put you in the despairing cynic category. Despairing cynics, everybody has a job that they can help us do to make this the most productive call possible. Despairing cynics can help us by challenging our assumptions and orthodoxy that we may have fallen into, especially ask that question of, I don't know if that's going to work the way you think it's going to work. It's a hard question to ask, but if you can step into that role, we'll have an incredibly productive call. Cautious optimists, familiar with 5 structures or plus or minus 5, can help us out by asking for clarifying questions and explanation. I can be super presumptive and just assume that everybody knows every structure off the top of their head. So if you notice that either myself or anybody else in the group is sort of getting caught up in jargon and not unpacking concepts that you don't understand, it would be extraordinarily helpful if you would ask for clarification and explanation. And that way we can keep everybody on the same page and help us learn together. Rapturous super users with plus or minus 15 structures in your toolkit have an important job, and that is to help us answer questions, especially those that you haven't answered before. If you think you might know the answer, but aren't certain if it's perfect, that is the ideal moment for you as a rapturous super user to step up and see and get some reps in, so to speak. And then for the Maestro minimalists in the room, if you're familiar with basically the whole toolkit of Liberating Structures, it would be extraordinarily helpful if you make space for others, especially those rapturous super users, to answer questions, and then build on the input that they have to offer with whatever information or insight you have. Let's see. And Jan is just here right on the bubble. Jan, you're just on the bubble, my friend. We're just about to get into Wise Crowds. So hold on to your butt and see if you can drop into the vibe. But this is the exact right time. So like I said, once you do that self-assessment, it would be super helpful. I'm also in the midst of an experiment with non-fungible tokens and some other Web3 tools. So if you want to go ahead and sign the guest book with your name, your phase of Liberating Structures development, and your email, then I will go ahead and send you a link to download your participation badge. And that can help us explore the space of non-deterministic identity and hopefully onboard some folks into the Web3 toolkit. So jump into the doc and leave your deets. We're going to be making use of 2 structures, the most explicit of which is Wise Crowds. Is there anybody, especially in that rapturous super user phase, that wants to walk us through Wise Crowds so I don't keep jabbering at you guys the whole time? I always feel like the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anybody? Then let's break the silence. So what we're going to do is start off with somebody who's going to offer us some form of help request in the form of a design brief. That includes some background about the place that their help request is happening in, the purpose or outcome of their session, who the participants are that they need to get engagement from in order to achieve their purpose, and any particulars around process. So this could be the time that you have allocated, the time constraints that you're under. This could be any thoughts that you have about structures or process to go about this help request. And we'll take between 2 and 5 minutes to probably 2 minutes to get that help request out there. And then the rest of us, we're going to act as consultants and then ask our clarifying questions. Any background information. It's important that clarifying questions are clarifying questions and not advice hidden as clarifying questions, because we want to leave that for the actual consultation, within which the client will turn off their webcam and microphone, and then we will, as consultants, chop it up. There's 2 questions in particular that I'm interested in and will help us sort of stick the landing for the design brief. And that is, what are the structures that come to your mind as ways of addressing the client's design brief? And how might we string those structures together in a workshop or in a work session in order to address their design brief? And then the client will come back and share their feedback, tell us how brilliant they think our advice is, or how totally off the mark it is, or someplace in between. And that's the move for wise crowds. So about the pattern of the structure, is there any questions or need for clarification there?
Nope, not on my part. Thanks.
Awesome.
Jeremy, the only thing is I have to leave in 25 minutes or 20 minutes, so I may not be able to do the full.
We should be able to get through one help request within by the end of the hour for sure.
Perfect.
And speaking of which, did anybody come with a design brief, with a particular meeting, workshop, session that they would like to throw at the consultants for us to work with?
I have one.
Anybody else?
I do have one too.
So we've got Mudakar, Justin, and Aaron.
And Brian.
And Brian. I came back to you.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, then we've got ourselves a shootout. So I would say most important criteria is who has is your design brief a well-defined session? Meaning that you have a meeting or a workshop or something along those lines. That might be an interesting criteria that can help us segregate so that we can handle these 2. The second might be I suppose, how can we prioritize? So it might be interesting to prioritize the users that are familiar with the fewest structures. That might help us be a good criteria to decide who we can lend our help to. So those are the 2 that jump off the top of my head. So that being said, how do we negotiate this 4-way tie with 2 slots?
I say we start with beginners.
Great. Then I guess let's reference our development phases. Mudakar, Justin, Brian, Aaron, where are you guys at on your learning journey?
I'm a super user.
You're a super user.
So am I.
I've got about 5 structures that I use most often.
Cool. And Mudakar, where were you at on your learning journey?
I know a couple of standalone structures. I have used them, but I am not very confident in bringing them together to form a string, coherent string.
Then that feels like a great space to prioritize. So based on those criteria, that'll put Mudakar and Brian into the driver's seat. Mudakar, Do you want to give us your start us off?
Yeah. So with the team that I'm working in, they want to explore the standard Scrum meeting of their current effectiveness and what they want to improve in those meetings. So that's the overall summary. So do you also want me to talk about what I have in mind of how I'm thinking of approaching this?
That seems like it could be relevant, and it might be helpful as well as if you make a specific selection on which meeting within the Scrum framework you think is the most important to redesign.
All right, sure. The daily Scrum.
Ooh. All right.
So in the daily Scrum, the general perception is it's a waste of time, and some team members they decline the invite without providing any information as to why they're declining that. And when they only have those meetings as of currently, they only have it 2 or 3 times a week. They don't see the need to have them on a daily basis. And they have set aside a 30-minute slot for when they meet, but that time it usually spills over. They go over 30 minutes. So some of the feedback that have come from the neutral observer is that the team members go into a lot of details, and that takes up a lot of time. That's why it may be spilling over. I'm trying to recall what else.
And just to round out our design brief, if you think about this, the outcome that you would like to help the team achieve in this daily Scrum, what comes to mind in terms of the purpose of this session that you want to help stick the landing on?
All right, that's a question for me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my ultimate end goal is to create and hold space for the team to reflect of what's happening, what they have observed, and where they want to go from where they are today. So that would be my first goal. So once I've created that space for them to reflect, they can come up with the actions that they want to take as a team, and on what is their hypothesis they're basing that those actions on, what they hope to gain out of those actions, and run that as an experiment for a couple of weeks to a few weeks, and regroup and reflect again of what's happening. Are we moving in the right direction in terms of achieving what they identified they want to achieve? And if not, again, reflect on what's happened, where we want to go. So incrementally, I want the team to reflect and make those small continuous improvement.
That seems like a big ask for the daily Scrum, but I can parse that. Clarifying questions, consultants.
How long do we have to do clarifying questions?
3 minutes.
How large is this group?
Just the core team members or the people who attend?
The people who are expected to participate in the Scrum. How many people we're talking about?
10 people, 10 core people, the core team members. And then there are additional people who just come in and supposed to be observers. But then they also contribute in terms of like, if there are any people problem, they contribute and add to the stand-up.
What have you tried that isn't working?
I haven't tried anything at all. So I'm quite new to the organization and the team. So yeah, I haven't tried anything at all. I've recently started going into that stand-up and started observing of what's happening. So that's all I've done so far.
Do they have do they use a technique, whether it's a Kanban or any type of sort of capture process approach, to just corral facts, information, whatever?
They do use their Kanban board. They walk the board during the stand-up.
Okay.
But then in the one that I've been so far, I've observed that there's just one person just walking through the board and calling out each individual of what's happening in their area, and then it goes from there.
So they don't alternate. Nobody alternates.
I'm assuming they do that, but I have not observed enough to confirm that.
How many meetings have you observed?
I've just been in one so far.
What is your role with respect to this group?
I'm the Scrum Master. Not embedded, because that's a pool-based role. If they have anything specific they want to achieve, they just pull me in. So this was one of the cases where they thought they wanted me to come in and start observing and help them improve that particular meeting.
Anybody else? Last chance for romance.
If you went in with boldness 10 times than what you feel right now, what would you do?
Thinking. Probably I would, based on what I have seen work in the past, probably suggest a new way of doing things in the daily Scrum.
Well, all right, Mudkar, thanks so much. Go ahead and mute yourself. Webcam's off, so that's a check. Consultants, what structures come to your mind to address this help request? And stringing them together maybe seems like a little bit much. And I notice what also seems hyper relevant for this design brief is invitation. So this might be a good opportunity to expand that into our consultation.
I think 15%. Because I think, anyways, do you just want us to say it, or do you want us to sort of discuss it or no?
Go for it, unpack it.
So what I've discovered, at least in my experience, is that there's a lot of pent up, in these very dense environments, there's a lot of pent up stuff, little stuff that can be fixed or improved or just acted on. And what I've sort of really over the last couple of years figured out is that solving big things isn't as important as just getting people moving in a positive direction. And then once that momentum gets built, then you just are sort of feeding the positive, machine, let's say. And so the 15 percenters I've found it's the stuff laying around, right? You don't have to ask anyone. You don't need 15 signatures. You don't need anything, right? You just can start doing it. And if you can't, and it's within those group of 10 people, then they control their fate too, right? Of those 15 percenters. So it starts to just uncork some of that positive behavior. So that's one of them that I would say. If that makes sense. Was I clear on that or not?
I can dig it. Anybody
Okay.
else?
I'm noticing maybe a sense of pent up frustration or anger. I mean, if people aren't even attending the meeting anymore, it sounds like there's probably really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I think maybe introducing something a little bit more playful or cathartic could be useful, like doing a TRIZ could be extremely cathartic because we could talk about how bad the meeting is while also, being generative and constructive about it.
Excellent. So I'll get a TRIZ in the daily. I like it. Anybody else? So there's a couple.
I was looking at the newbies, actually. I thought this could be useful for either Duke or Miguel, because I noticed Aaron, you and I were the super users, so of course we had immediate suggestions. But yep. I'm curious, even if you don't have a LS, what's your take on the situation?
I'm not sure if I misunderstood what my dude was saying, but are the liberating structure going to be used in the daily Scrum or to basically make the group do the daily Scrum better? Because if that is the case, I will agree with both of you. I mean, probably start with a TRIZ and then a 15%, and then everybody comes with a new way of doing the daily Scrum, but not to be used on daily basis, because you're discussing the day-to-day activities in the daily Scrum, right? That is my take of first get the group together and then move.
Yeah, I don't have any particular LS structure in mind. I mean, it sounds like the meaning and purpose of the meeting is not there for the participants if they don't want to come. So there has to be some way of capturing what is that meaning and purpose. Like, why could it be, and in what ways then could that be helpful, meaningful to them? Why bother coming?
What occurs to me is that the meeting seems rather large, so large that it becomes cumbersome, and so that structurally, that's a big challenge. And so the first thing I would look to do is to see if we could split the group into smaller teams that have based on a shared objective, and give them a little more focus.
I can definitely. That's a beautiful bridge. I'm going to take that bridge and run with it. So I think for the nuts and bolts of the daily Scrum, I can see 3 structures that jump out as being highly relevant. I think considering you're sort of in this group that is rather unwieldy, a 1-2 for all could be really helpful to sort of unstick it. Just splitting folks into those relevant subgroups. If this is a virtual event, then tooling is a little tricky for that, because I would want people to prioritize being in a subgroup with the people that are the most relevant for the work that they're intending to do the next day. In the similar respect, I think impromptu networking as a pattern to do this daily scrum, so that way, you know, we circumvent all of this standing around in a circle bullshit, and we just one-on-one with the people that are the most relevant to, hey, I might actually need to talk to you about something today, and this is what I'm on about. So that could definitely help increase the brevity. Another thing that also comes to mind that is a little bit, requires a bit more structural take, but that could also be ecocycle planning, to think about the task or the story that you're working on, and just say, hey, this is where I'm at in the ecocycle, and to give me a little bit more granularity perhaps on the flow to done as it applies to the thing that I'm working on, and just using that visual tool to map my progress. You know, hey, if I'm stuck in a trap, I'm stuck in a trap. I might need some help there. So those are the ones that jump out to me. And then this question of invitation again and purpose are still very much looming large. Anybody else? So coming back to then this question of invitation, what might be like, if we could, what might be like the invitation that you would want to offer these guys in whatever format they pick, that might help them to unstick this log jam and maybe focus their attention? I know that's a really hard question because invitations are tricky, but is there anything that jumps out at us?
I think something possibly deviant might be useful, because I mean, if people, like I said, if people aren't attending meetings, like, one, to actually get them in the room, they're already going to be like a deer just ready to leave, and to get them to like want to participate, want to belong, that's also going to be really, really difficult too. um, I like the idea of smaller groups, not having them stand up. So like the concept of like co-working on something, I don't exactly know what the invitation would be, but like I said, I think something a little bit more meta deviant, TRIZ-esque could be really useful.
Yeah, I like the idea of definitely something a little tricky. If I think about then focusing down on like what might be like the absolute min spec of invitation, that I might really prioritize who might I need to want to talk to today about the thing that I'm intending to work on. Like that might focus it down in such a way that maybe gets rid of all the minutia about this. I'm going to do this thing and that thing, and this is all other crap. But like, hey, I want to talk to you at some point today, could be just enough to then spark some interaction for after the session that then sort of snowballs into a more virtuous cycle.
I like what you're saying, Jeremy. I remember the client was talking about the one of the biggest issues is too much information and it going over. I think maybe introducing a more of like a min spec approach and really scaling down this meeting to bare essentials, I think might also help them discover their purpose of why they're here. I mean, is there purpose to talk to one another about what they're working on? Maybe. Is it to connect in this like isolated environment? Maybe.
Well, that puts us on our time boundary. So, oh, wise and powerful client. Hold on. Where'd you go? Muda? you change your name?
Hi, yeah, Madhu.
Madhu. So tell us, what do you take away from this consultation?
I like like how coherently it fell into place, like those small groups or subgroups using a TRIZ and 15% solution to get things started. Like Aaron said, it's not about those big improvements, just getting the people to move in the right direction to start with. So those things stood out to me. And in terms of invitation, there was just one that I was able to pick what you were saying, Jeremy, about who might I need to talk today to help me move forward.
Well, super.
Yeah, thank you.
Our pleasure. And to echo the idea of TRIZ in the daily, I think if your meeting is fucked right now, like if it's just a turd and nobody wants to show up, then I'd be happy to burn one daily and just do something totally different to just shake the tree, so to speak.
Would burn 3 or 4.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Like, if nobody's showing up, who cares? Like, just like, why not? So thanks, Madhu, for that design brief. I really appreciate it. So that puts Brian into the driver's seat. If there's anybody obviously that needs to step out, as we are at the top of the hour, I appreciate your participation and hope this has been a great learning experience. I'll see you around hopefully next time, Miguel. Justin, you're going to make me pass out, bro.
It's 9 in the morning. What time is it where you were at?
5 in the afternoon. Yeah.
Oh God, we're on opposite sides on this sleep scale.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know though. I always feel like I could use a nap. So,
sorry, that was funny.
So, I have a question. Do we want to take 5 or do we want to jump right into Brian's design brief?
I kind of want to just power through.
All right, let's do it then. Brian, what do you got for us?
Well, I am designing a seminar series, but I've never done. I want to design a series of meetings for paid attendance. Let me back up a little more. I am a student of team self-management, and I started with holacracy. Now I'm learning sociocracy. I've learned a little bit about Semco style. So there's a 6 or 8 different, fairly well-known, different self-management frameworks I've heard of. Agile is one of them. My purpose of this course that I want to facilitate is to help people explore those different frameworks. But I'm not an expert in all of them. So what I intend to do is to bring people together and then have everybody have people pair up, maybe in groups of 3, and each team pick a framework to research, and then come back and teach the rest of us about how that framework works and how it's similar or different from something else that they're familiar with, and do that over the course of 6 or 8 or 10 weeks. But I've never done this before, so I didn't. I had a brief career at grad school, never finished. We didn't do much in the way of seminars, so. But that's kind of the motif I see taking this to is bringing people into the room where everybody has their own expertise and can participate in the conversation with it. But there's a lot of things that people don't know. So I'm not exactly. I'd love to get some ideas on different microstructures to help move this along.
Okay, so let me check and see if what I think I understand is clear. So it sounds like your context is inside some form of course for around self-management.
Yeah, it'll be on Zoom.
Okay, that you want to create online then. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that the intended outcome of this, I guess I want to sort of focus more on like kicking this thing off on the initial session, for example, just to give me a little bit more tangibility. And so the intended outcome is that students explore different self-management frameworks and sort of tooling. Does that sound about right?
Yes, but to characterize the group and what I expect that they're gonna draw them in is that they're interested in implementing some form of team self-management on their team. So they're team leaders or higher up senior leaders, but they're not sure exactly what structure they want to use. They've heard of a couple, but there's a lot of unfamiliarity with the various structures they could focus on. So it's they're self-management curious.
Okay. Consultants, clarifying questions.
So most of your management courses are going to be around self-organizing, flat org work, right?
Yes, flat is a misnomer, but yes.
Yeah. Horizontal? Sorry, this is just semantics.
Yeah, non-hierarchical. Let's put it that way.
Are you targeting any specific industries or segments? Public sector versus certain segments of the economy, just because they all have different sort of drivers or dynamics. So I'm just wondering.
Initially, I want to target startup tech companies.
Okay.
Are you looking to work with intact teams or stranger groups? Also, Duke, I just saw that you unmuted.
Oh, go ahead.
Say the question again, please, Justin.
Are you looking to work with stranger groups or intact teams?
For this course, stranger groups. Later on, it might lead into intact teams, but this is all about people who don't know each other coming to explore this space together.
Duke, I'm looking at you.
I don't have anything at the moment then.
And Brian, what do you want the participants to take away from the session?
Two things. One is I want them to have in mind a one or two frameworks that have been discussed over the course of the several weeks that they want to dive deeper into. Two is that they are comfortable with experiment. So it occurs to me, having just now said that holding some structured experiments might be worthwhile, but I don't know exactly how. I'm not there yet.
Can you repeat that second part, please?
Well, if I want to, I want them to have a sense of freedom to experiment. And it occurs to me that modeling those experiments might be a good idea. So they can then run some experiments with their own teams.
Okay, thank you.
What are your feelings towards this seminar series?
What are my feelings? I'm excited about it because I've been trying to figure out how to do some online. I don't want to just do one-on-one coaching with leaders, because that's too small. I want to I want to facilitate larger conversations and exploration, and I want to learn about it too, because I am certainly not an expert in all these frameworks. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the learning I'm going to do, but I'm excited for the experience that I hope others will have, because they also want to learn. So it excites me, and I hope it excites others for exactly the same reason.
Last chance. Any more clarifying questions? All right, well, let's call that good enough for now, safe enough to get started. Brian, if you'll turn off your webcam and your mic, but pay very close attention to the consultation of us experts. So what structures jump out to you guys to activate this thing, and how might we string them together?
Can I go first? I have something in mind.
Awesome.
So based on what the client mentioned, I think he said that he's excited to also learn from others. Maybe because this is with the people he doesn't know, who doesn't know each other. Could start off with 1 to 4 all. A small grouping, and then impromptu networking, asking with an invitation that will ask them to explore what do they know about the subject and what they are looking forward to in the session.
Dig that. Definitely a great way to sort of break the ice and get people interacting.
There's a model called the Jigsaw Classroom, which is where they go off into different groups, learn something, and then send leaders to teach other groups. I don't think it's been adopted to LS yet, but it can easily translate if you just design the elements. That came up for me. Something that also came up for me, which would have been a little bit more like wild and exciting, was a rapid prototype. Or a improv prototype, just doing some sort of like experiential action where the groups organize inside the style or model that they're researching. I think would be really interesting.
Yeah. So one that I've sort of stumbled through a couple times, but I think would be pretty interesting, effective, is WINFY, what I need from you. So if you sort of if you sort of think about what you would like to sort of achieve, you want to surface sort of all the critical needs across all the different silos or all the different modes of thought, and sort of accept or reject which ones you want to keep, if that's something that is an objective. So then, as I think was already said, you can use things like min specs So what, or what, so what, now what? You can pull in 9 whys. So you can kind of string a whole bunch of pieces like that together to get to, or, you know, or to get through a journey together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot that could be relevant. When I think about trying to help folks sort of initially make sense of and organize around these topics, some form of shift and share feels like a good way to go, to just, you know, arrange into, you know, I'm not sure if we got a sense of how big the group was going to be, but just to be in smaller subgroups and sort of, you know, go through the different option spaces that are sort of laid out, and, you know, see what those groups can explain to each other about what they know about these different methods, and also use that as a way of organizing into, oh, it looks like we're totally clueless about, nobody in our group knew what the fuck was what about holacracy, so this might be a particular place where we want to spend some more time and attention into. Yes, I did say what the fuck, Isaiah. I'm sorry. You're right. I should watch my language. We are on YouTube after all as well. So
it's 6 dudes.
Yeah. So shift. I like the idea of, especially impromptu to start, just to kick things off, get into some form of shift and share around these topics, and then I would really be excited about this opportunity to like take on that framework for a limited period of time. That feels a little bit big for my britches in this moment. One thing that's coming up is also relevant is, so a tool that I use a lot is the Strategizer test card, in order to design hypotheses and clearly defined tests. So that might be one tool that you could bring to bear that's like extraordinarily straightforward, to activate the mode of thinking about, okay, so how do I set up a test? How do I define what my sort of hypothesis or assumption is? What is the action I might be able to use to probe into that hypothesis? And what might I be able to look at to let me know if I'm sticking the landing or crashing? And then, you know, what might be my success scenario? Or I tend to prefer the null hypothesis. So which looks like, if I'm wrong, I will see, you know, a total shit show that is WXYZ. So there's a bunch of tools that sort of that like scream out to me about, you know, sort of defining tests. Anybody else?
One other thing that comes to my mind is a 15% solution, because the client mentioned one of the takeaways that you want the participant to have is for them to go and experiment of what they've learned. So it could be starting off with impromptu networking, shift and share, and 15%, followed by that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, so if I think about, so something, stringing these things together, starting off with something like impromptu, then getting into a shift and share, and then inviting folks to sort of self-organize around the topics that are relevant. I think what I need from you is actually could be really effective to sort of go from group to group and surface the most relevant questions. Like if I organize into sociocracy and I look at, you know, the group across the way and go, you're gonna talk about Scrum, you know, what is from this perspective of where I'm at with sociocracy, or just in general, what are the the two most burning questions I have about Scrum in order to exchange and create the sort of the agenda, or the laundry list of topics that are most relevant for the other people in the room, could be effective. And then I love the idea of doing some form of like debrief on that. So what, now what, into like a 15% solution of like, okay, min specs makes a lot of sense on that as well. But that's for sure. That's getting long. Yeah. Well, you have to wait till Mama gets back. Papa's busy right now. Yeah. Go get me an elastic, yeah. Anybody else? I don't know. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for Mama. Papa's busy. Talking to my friends. Talking to my dudes. Justin, though, I'm curious to see if you can if we can get some more meat on the bones into this, like improv prototyping, or some way to like adopt the structure. That might be for like a later session, later down the series. But how about that? I don't know. Ooh, it feels so big.
Yeah, that's the sense or energy I had about it. I don't know. They're all different, like, principles of practice, right? You could do like a rapid like purpose to practice using like holacracy or agile or SQL, and see how those approaches work. I'm not really too familiar with all the different self-organization models, so I can't really speak to what a valuable learning experience is, but I do know applied learning is the best, especially because you get to try something out and then you can learn together in the seminar format.
No doubt. Yeah, and I'm thinking like creating some form of defined test. So I guess what that would sort of necessitate is that you create for each sort of lesson as you go down. You would have to have some form of like task, like some form of like, laundry list full of things that we want to accomplish, and how might we adopt this particular organizational structure to decompose and chew through that small list of tasks. And obviously, like stuff like Lego Serious Play sort of jumps out as hey, that's good enough to try it on and see how it works.
Yeah,
I
was thinking like game jams they do with like video game designers, where you go and it's like you have either 6 hours to 3 days, you form your group, and then you make your game, and like then you're done. And having something like that, but like following a certain self-organizing practice could be really interesting in how it informs or deforms group cohesion.
Totally. And another thing, as you describe that really jumps out as perhaps relevant, is working out loud. So, just thinking about, hey, what if our intended outcome, or the thing that we were working on, was just like a blog post that we wanted to create about this self-management topic. So how might we then, like, and super self-recursive, super meta, like how might we then use this organization or this self-management method to organize ourselves into the work of creating this blog post, which seems well defined. It might also require more time than within the course, so we then might have to do some back and forth over the course of the next week or two to come up with something. But documenting that process in sort of real life or on social media or whatever seems like a great way to just engage with the learning and see, I think move specifically towards that end goal, which is that the people take this stuff from this course and put it into, you know, whatever context. So if I can talk about my exploration of these different things, I can basically see who around me is interested in that. And, you know, there you have a sort of there you have a literal impetus of self-organization, right? It becomes self-evident which of these methods might become the most interesting for us because somebody said, I'm curious about that one. Who gives a shit what I think? If you're curious about it, let's fucking run with it, right? Well, yeah, all right. Anybody else? Or should we call Brian back? Duke, you want to jump into the jam? All right, Brian. Well, that's your consultation. What sticks out as relevant for you, and might you be able to make use of?
What strikes me as most relevant is having them create something they can walk away with in that designing an experiment that they can take out of the class to run in their own organization. And that's you know, you're working out loud, organizing like around a blog post. How about we organize around, let's design an experiment to take with us outside of the class. We don't have to run the experiment in the class. We could do a quick prototype, but then, you know, having a hypothesis and experiments and you know, what was it, the null hypothesis, you know, I love that. So being able to having that as the capstone project of the course.
Cool. Yeah, and so, you know, we took notes in the storyboard doc. So you can see a laundry list of the structures that we proposed, and I put the images for a couple tools that I use regularly to design tests or prototypes. That feels like our time today for this March 21st edition of the Wise Crowd's Liberating Structures Design Call. I'd like to thank Brian and Madhu for their awesome design briefs, and I hope to see you guys next time.
All right, Jeremy,
Thank
just
you.
one last thing. I
Yes.
see the sessions are recorded. Is there any way I can view the past recordings?
Yeah, most definitely. There is they got uploaded to Yonder YouTube channel, and I've got a playlist and everything. I think there should be a link on the meetup page, but that depends which meetup you registered for. So let me track down the link right now, and I will share that with you. I would also be eternally grateful for Brian and Madhu if you guys would come back after you've, you know, ran your test or tried to implement this stuff and let us know how it went.
Yep, definitely.
Jeremy, do you mind if I put numbers on this 76-page document?
You please, dude. I mean, everybody should have editing rights.
Great. Yeah, so the all the notes are on page 13.
Let's see, the Liberating Structures Wise Clouds Design Call playlist. That's the one. Share a link, copy. Boom, shakalaka.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jeremy.
You're welcome. Well, like I said, thanks for your time, attention, and energy. Hope to see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Safe travels.